Being wrong. I didn't know what it was or why it was wrong. I just knew that I had something that other kids and even the adults didn't seem to. I just thought in different ways, and I actually was really good at hiding it. I started self-harming when I was 12, and my parents didn't find out until I was 16. So I kept everything under wraps for a long time because it just wasn't talked about. You don't talk about stuff like that.
Could you tell me that piece again?
Okay, so there's this known theory that, we know roughly where the center of the universe is. And if you point a telescope at the center of the universe, you're kind of looking back in time because light travels outwards and you're catching the light as it travels out. Well, in theory, if you got a powerful enough telescope, you could see back to the Big Bang because light's still traveling out from that. And I found as I've gotten older, it's like I've gotten a more powerful telescope on my own life. And as I get older, weird things that I did when I was a kid make sense because I was struggling with all this stuff. And when you're a kid, you don't have the answers or have access to the knowledge or know how to go about figuring out what's going on. You just kind of try to keep your head above water. And in the last 5 years, I reached a point where I could look back at my childhood and be like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. It makes sense why I was having suicidal thoughts at such a young age. It makes sense why I had trouble fitting in with the other kids. 2 years ago, my husband and I decided to try and have children. So the doctor I was with at the time titrated me off my medicine. I didn't even completely make it off my meds before I fell apart. And it has taken most of the last 2 years to get myself put back together from that. In some ways, it was a relief. I didn't have to hide it anymore. And I was somewhere where they acknowledged it was a real problem. And I wasn't alone for the first time. I was locked up in a ward with people who were just like me.
And with those,
Studied some psychology, like when I was in high school, just reading books, this and that. A lot of it made sense to me. I guess I was probably studying it partially to figure out what was going on with me. A lot of psych students do. A lot of people go into psychology because they themselves or their family members or someone close to them has problems. And it's the first way to start figuring out what's going on with yourself. It's a lot easier to deal with now because I understand there's a lack of knowledge and a certain amount of generational and institutional ignorance around the subject. Because even my general practitioner, while he was in school, he had a psych rotation of like a week. But he obviously doesn't understand, that you can't fix anxiety by breathing. I mean, yes, breathing exercises will help when you're having an anxiety attack, but it doesn't stop the fact that your brain is exploding. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like my head is this big and my brain is that big and it's going to burst out. The world is shiny again in a way that it hasn't been since I was very, very young. Because I notice, things happen. It gets harder to get out of bed. I'm upset more often. I cry over things that shouldn't bother me. I just start feeling more depressed or caring less. Because for me, depression isn't being sad. For me, depression is sad is up here and not feeling anything is down here. And I'm like way down here. I'm past the point of caring about feeling anything. I don't care if I get up. I don't care if I get dressed. I don't care if I lose my job. I don't care if the cats have food. I can't. It's like nothing works.
And then
Crazy. People think if you're crazy that you're somehow broken or not enough. Definitely a whole lot of feeling not enough. I think the main thing with mental health that people don't understand is that mental health is physical health. It's having any sort of mental health issue is the same thing as having epilepsy or having any other disorder of the brain or disorder of the body where stuff just doesn't work right. So it should be treated the same as if you had the flu or as if you had cancer. You seek out treatment for it. You receive support from people. People tell you, yay, you're doing a good job fighting, not suck it up, why are you acting like that? A peer-to-peer group coordinator, so I can help run those, stuff like that. And I think the reason NAMI is so successful is you're taking people with lived experiences who have gotten to a point in their life. I don't want to say that I'm better. I want to say that I'm no longer drowning in my illness. You didn't talk about it. I've come 180 degrees and I will stand up on a chair in the middle of a room and yell at people about it because I feel so lucky to be alive still. When it comes down to it, I want to be alive and my brain doesn't. That part of my brain doesn't. And it actively works that way. So I now actively work in the opposite direction. I want to tell everyone about mental health and tell everyone about NAMI and tell everyone that it gets better. Because there was no one yelling when I was a kid. There was no one when I was 7 and 8. And there's no one when I was 17. And even when I was 25, it was still awfully quiet. It wasn't talked about. I've reached the point where it's like, I'm still alive. I don't care. I'm going to be really loud. Because people may look at me funny, but someone may look at me funny and then go home and be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Maybe it'll affect them. Maybe it'll affect their children or a friend.